Did it happen to you? Inside and outside of Mexico, in classrooms, in official history, and in serious documentaries and quotes, they say that when Tenochtitlan fell in 1521, Mexico was conquered. This assertion is completely far from reality. If this has been told to the Purépechas, Mayas, Tlaxcaltecas, and many others, obviously it wouldn't have pleased them at all that all their territories were considered part of Mexico. That is, the Mexicas. Especially since many of these people were presently enemies of the Mexicas. But well, these habits of speaking, this obsolete term, were already happening when Hernán Cortés, in his second letter of relation around 1519, almost 2 years before the fall of the twin cities of Tenochtitlan and Tlatelolco, proposed to the Spanish king to call these lands New Spain of the Ocean Sea. Emperor Charles V officially ratified this in October 1522, naming Cortés Captain General and Governor of New Spain. However, in our education system, we were vaguely taught that after the supposed conquest of Mexico in 1521, 3,000 years passed without explaining what happened during that time, in what is now called New Spain, referring to the century merely as the colonial area. Suddenly, we encounter Hidalgo's cry in Dolores, which is also not well explained in context, where supposedly the father of the nation said, "Let's kill these Huachpines." Then, as if it were a lightning war, Mexico achieved this independence and everyone lived happily ever after. There are huge gaps between these events, stemming from the premise that Mexico was conquered in 1521. Now, why is this not true? The country where we live today, which is much smaller in size than it was in 1821, thanks to the post-independence invasions and separation from what we call now Central America, was formally named the Mexican Empire only in 1821, when the Act of Independence was signed. Thus, only on September 28 of that year can we say that Mexico was born. Therefore, the conquest of Mexico in 1521 never happened, simply because Mexico did not exist then. We can only talk about the siege of Tenochtitlan, which was not carried out by thousands of Spaniards, as there were at almost 2,000 accompanied by no less than 100,000 allies from diverse groups, such as the Tlaxcaltecas, Totonacas, and Texcocanos. Thus, while the Mexica Tlatoani was intercepted and captured in the lake to be later tortured. On the other side, there were thousands and thousands of allies, now called indigenous, who enjoyed the victory over the Mexicans, so named by the Spaniards. Before and after that year, there were groups that opposed the Spaniards, others who fought them initially only to join them out of the fear of covenants, and others who surrendered without fight. Therefore, on August 13, 1521, in the Julian calendar, only 2 groups were accepted: the Mexicas, Tlatelolcas, and the Mexicas Tenochcas. He did not represent the entire of this territory. If, as they say, Mexico was conquered in 1521, how can we explain the numerous battles that took place across much of the continent afterward? After defeating the Mexicas between 1521 and 1522, Cortés, his captains, and others who arrived later went the various parts from the center, reaching places like the Purepecha zone, who were first enemies of the Mexicas. Here, the Purepecha ruler submitted to the Spanish king without much resistance. In 1523, Pedro de Alvarado and other captains of Cortés arrived in present-day Central America, laying the foundations of today's El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, of course with battles along the way. Others went to Colima and present-day Jalisco, where they similarly subdued groups in that area and established encomiendas. Meanwhile, in the current capital of Querétaro, there was a mix of myth and historical fact in 1531, years after the fall of the Mexica, with the supposed appearance of Apostle Santiago converting many in that area. In the northern region, the Chichimeca War, a guerrilla war involving various groups from that area, lasted decades from 1550 to 1600. In the east, the Mixton War occurred in 1541, in which Pedro de Alvarado died in battle. The Maya zones of Peninsula were among the first explored by the Spaniards, although Cortés and its captains initially focused their military efforts on the Mexicas. After 1521, the peninsula began to be subdued, initiated by Francisco Montejo and later by his son as a nephew, all named Montejo. One of the main avenues in Mérida is named Paseo Montejo in his honor. Montejo also subdued Opersing in Tabasco from 1530 to 1537. Meanwhile, the Yucatan was subdued by Montejo and his relatives only until 1547. Finally, in 1697, 176 years after the fall of Tenochtitlan, the last stronghold of the Isais in Tayasal, Guatemala, fell. Despite this and many other battles, some northern groups were never subdued due to their nomadic nature and ability to hide in mountains, sierras, and deserts. All of this occurred after the supposed conquest of Mexico in 1521. The correct statement is that in 1521 Mexico Tenochtitlan fell, but afterward territories were gradually, and in some cases, never subdued until reaching their maximum extension in what is now called New Spain. If we talk about conquest or invasion, it took 300 years of the so-called colonial period, mainly carried out by the internal struggles of all these groups, who were subduing each other under the eyes of the Spaniards. Therefore, don't believe the tall tales because in 1521, Mexico was not conquered. And always remember, love and know your history, culture, and traditions.